Very generous introduction and good morning. Last year I began a conversation with Mainers about what our next governor can do to get our state back on the right track. What I heard throughout the state of Maine, I came up with my Maine Made plan, which is my business investment plan to capitalize on the competitive advantage we have here in the state of Maine. Since then, I continue to talk with Mainers of how we can make our state stronger and create an economy that works for everyone. That also is making sure that everyone plays by the same rules. That's why today I'm introducing my plan to fight waste, fraud, and abuse in the Department of Health and Human Services and the programs that it oversees, and improve on the way our state helps families struggling with low wages and poverty. It is critical that Maine anti-poverty program provides the right help to the right people and the right amount of time. Governor LePage has decided that people who are poor are just lazy and blames those without jobs for their troubles. Though he points the finger at working families and accusing them of fraud and abuse, some of the biggest abuses come from within his own administration. We all know that there are some people who are abusing the system. We've all heard stories or seen examples of shameless people committing fraud. And I'm as outraged as anyone about the waste, fraud, and abuse that steals from working families and those who truly need the help. Every dollar that is misused is a dollar that is less available for someone else who's trying to put food on the table and pay the bills. As governor, I will not tolerate the abuse of the system that Governor LePage has allowed to continue unchecked during his administration, only to bring it up in an election year as the governor has done. But I will also not tolerate stereotyping the poor and calling them lazy as a way to just blindly slash programs that truly help Maine's families in need. So rather than just talking about getting serious about waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement the way this governor has, I will actually be doing something about it. Today, I am proposing the creation of the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services. Wow. The office will fight waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement at all levels of the Department of Health and Human Services. Because of its size and its complexity, the very nature of the Department of Health and Human Services is vulnerable to mismanagement and abuse. DHHS spends about $3.4 billion a year with state and federal money, and oversees a broad range of different programs to improve the lives of people here in the state of Maine. But ensuring that dollars are not misused means starting within the department itself. Unfortunately, under Governor LePage administration, DHHS has gone from one crisis or scandal to the next. Allegations that senior officials ordered documents shredded to hide inappropriate contract awards, mismanagement of non-emergency transportation services that have cost the state millions of dollars and left vulnerable people stranded. And just this very morning, it was reported that a service contract that the governor signed for that will continue to actually give them more money. We have seen serious problems at the Riverview Psychiatric Center, which cost the state millions of dollars in federal funds while endangering staff and patients. Unexplained budget deficits and errors, failure to perform core functions which have caused homelessness to increase here in Maine. But perhaps the most egregious example of one of the governors that we're still waiting to hear from the governor is actually take responsibility for is the Alexander Report, a non-binding contract, a no-bid contract rather, to an out-of-state consultant that it turns out was largely plagiarizing. Governor LePage has told the legislature that his handling of that report is none of their business. Well, I served in the legislature. Legislatures have an oversight responsibility, and yes, it is their business on how this governor and the administration spends their money. But wasting nearly $1 million of taxpayers' money is most certainly everyone's business here in the state of Maine. Real families, our neighbors, our friends, people in every community have been hurt by the governor's mismanagement. It needs to stop. And I think even the small group outside who are protesting can agree with me that it definitely has to stop. In the office of the Inspector General, which will be an independent office that will focus on the Department of Health and Human Services, will combat waste, fraud, and abuse and misconduct, ensure program integrity and efficiency, and make sure that the department dollars are spent properly. It will combine program expertise, audit, and investigatory capabilities while strengthening the internal controls and working cooperatively with the Attorney General. And every step of the way, it will focus on protecting taxpayers' dollars and improving on the way we provide assistance to those who need that assistance. By stopping waste, fraud, and abuse, we will definitely make it the money go much further than what it is today. We also need to reform the programs that we have combated at the root of what's causing the poverty here in Maine. And in the coming weeks, I will release my plan to address food insecurity and hunger issues, tackle childhood poverty, put Mainers back to work, and keep families from falling into poverty in the first place. And we can help stabilize families by emergency assistance, keeping them in their homes, keep them off TANF and saving taxpayers money in the long run. My plan is straightforward, and it is achievable. No more name calling, no more bullying. We've seen enough of that over the last 3.5 years. What Mainers deserve is a real reform, a reform that we can see results. And that reform starts by having a separate office of the Inspector General to really focus on the issues within the largest department in state government, the most complicated department in state government, and it will give the governor and the legislature an opportunity to really see what's happening within the Department of Health and Human Services. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Congressman, do you take any responsibility for the scandal unfolding at the Veterans Affairs Administration?
That is, we're working in a bipartisan manner, and like Chairman Miller, my Republican colleague, has said, that this is not a political issue, and it's unfortunate that my two opponents have turned it into a political issue, and I look forward to addressing those shortcomings. Very glad that we've had the oversight on the committee. Like the legislature tries to have the oversight here in the Maine legislature, gets stopped by our governor by refusing to have the departments to testify before the committee. That's uncalled for, that's not leadership, that's not governing. So we're going to address the scandal issue that has happened in Phoenix, Arizona, and some of the other issues, but we're doing it in a bipartisan manner, the way leadership truly should work, and it has not worked. But we've seen that fail leadership.
Were there any of Governor LePage's proposals last session around welfare that you did agree with, or parts of the proposal?
Well, actually, the governor talks about the EBT cards, and actually that was something that passed the legislature unanimously. Unfortunately, the governor has refused to implement it. It's been 2 years. When you look at the Office of the Inspector General they're proposing to create, that actually will help focus on the programmatic areas within the department, and so this would not have occurred. As far as the programs, as it relates to the other programs within the department as it relates to poverty issues, I'll be rolling out my plan later on. But this is the first step that is extremely important that we address to get to the bottom of this. This is not a political issue. That's why I want the Office of Inspector General's office to be independent from the governor's office as well as the Department of Health and Human Services to help deal with the waste, fraud, and abuse that has occurred under this administration. And it's unacceptable that we've seen so much abuse under this administration, and read a list of stuff that's already has happened, and that has to stop. And it's an issue I look forward to working with the legislature, Republicans and Democrats, to address.
Mike, would the OIG look a lot like the Opega office that we see now, and would it utilize new staff or absorb existing staff within DHHS? And how large of an agency would you see this becoming?
Yep. When you look at Opega has done a good job. The problem with Opega is that they're not focused on the day-to-day operations within state government. So this would be similar actually, but the focus would be to focus on day-to-day operations within the Department of Health and Human Services, not only in the waste, fraud, and abuse, but also to figure out how these programs can be run smoothly, more smoother than what they currently are today. As far as the cost, I envision actually utilizing some of the audit folks that transfer from the Department of Health and Human Services. We have the Department of Audit and the Attorney General's office as well. This is the largest agency in state government that spends $3.4 billion. The issues are very complex when you're dealing with dual eligible issues with Medicare, Medicaid, and it's something that we have to get a handle on. When you look at the legislature being a part-time legislature, it's very difficult for them as well to get their handle on the complexity of these issues. So it will actually give that focused point to this one department that really needs that focus point.
Congressman, would this be a cabinet level appointment equal to the commissioner of DHHS? And would you expect this person to investigate even your commissioner if they thought that person wasn't doing the job?
Yeah, the Inspector General will be appointed by the governor for a fixed 4-year term confirmed by the state Senate. And yes, it'll be to be independent clearly of the governor's office as well as the Department of Health and Human Services. And it will investigate what the Department of Health and Human Services are doing and to report back to the legislature and to the governor's office and the public as far as what they found out in different programs. It's that oversight that has not had happened here in Maine, and it's definitely needed. And that independence of this Inspector General's office is what's crucially needed, because we do not need politics when you're dealing with people's lives. And we've heard this governor use waste, fraud, and abuse so well during this election year cycle. It's time to put a stop to it and really focus on the issues and stop that waste, fraud, and abuse that the governor talks about. But it starts from internal waste, fraud, and abuse, and we've seen a lot of it that has occurred within this administration.
Congressman, talking about the inspectors who found the supposedly only $53,000 in fraud, how does putting them in a different silo of government and slapping a different name on them make a difference in the work they do? The inspectors, what I look at, those inspectors are focused on a certain issue. The Inspector General's office will be focused on the department, will be focused on what the current law is, not only at the state level but also at the federal level, and that they're going to be laser focused on these particular issues. And they'll be working with the department as far as getting some of the information that they need to get, but it'll be completely outside of the department. When you look at inspectors within the Department of Health and Human Services, they still have to report to the chain of command. We saw it with the CDC shredding of the documents. They're all under the control of the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services, and ultimately was under the control of the governor. This is totally separate, so they will not have to fear about retributions, and I intend to strengthen the whistleblower to protect our state employees who are seeing waste, fraud, and abuse, whether it's done by management within the department or from individuals who are getting benefits that they do not deserve. So this is something that we are going to get serious about waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're going to get serious with it in a way that does not include politics, what we're seeing that this governor has done over the last year.
Congressman, I know you're coming out with plans for the programs themselves at a later date, but there's a lot of people in the state who believe that there's just too much, that the programs are too big, that it's a bigger program than Maine can afford. Do you believe that? And how would you expand the various welfare programs, cut them back, keep them where they are?
I'll be addressing those issues later on. I think we have to look at the system to find out where the problems, why are people getting into poverty anyway? Why are people now, when you look at homelessness in Maine, it's gone up, where other states it's actually gone down because of the programs are not working. And it's time to get rid of that politics and antidotes and really focus on why are people in poverty in the first place and how can these programs work better. When you look at some of the problems that I've heard out there talking to folks who are getting some state assistance, if they're to get a job, but that job doesn't pay enough, but if they take that job, then they lose their benefits over here and they have kids, what are they going to do? They're going to stay in that job. What you need is a tiered system to actually encourage them to get that job, but they will not lose all of their benefits over here. They'll lose some, but not all the benefits. And you got to do a better job with actually pairing people up for work. So if someone's getting state or local assistance, to be able to pair them up with work and get them trained so they can go to work and get them off the programs there that help. So, but we will be rolling those programs out. But the first step in this is to take a strong action against the waste, fraud, and abuse, both within the department and outside of the Department of Health and Human Services. And that's why rolling this one out separately is something that we definitely have to address.
We've
And
got
we
just
only
a few
time for-
minutes, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, so traffic cop.
Go to the button.
Chris, sorry.
The governor has been talking about welfare reform since last year, and it's obvious that he's going to make it a center of his campaign going forward. Kind of a two-part question. To what degree is your announcement today reactionary, trying to pull that issue back into your campaign? And specifically, what are your ideas for welfare reform?
We'll be rolling out those ideas later on as far as how we're going to reform some of the actual programs that are out. This is the first step to deal with the issue about waste, fraud, and abuse that the governor has expounded upon but hasn't done anything about. We will not tolerate the waste, fraud, and abuse that this governor has allowed to happen within his department. And that will not be allowed under a municipal administration. This is the first step to actually dealing with that. If you look at some of the programs, yes, the governor has been talking about it. He brings up EBT cards. That was something that passed the legislature unanimously. This administration had failed to implement it for 2 years. Why wait until an election year to implement it? Congress, we passed a bill a couple of years ago in the House that dealt with the EBT card, wait for the Senate to act. So this is an issue that, having grown up in a large Franco family up in northern Maine, having to struggle to make ends meet, people do not want people living off the system. They want people to work. But we also want to help people, our neighbors and friends who need that help. And what this governor has done, he's politicized the whole waste, fraud, and abuse and demonized people who are getting assistance. That is wrong. I can tell you, having come from the Katahdin region and seeing the mill, seeing employees up there, all of a sudden they're no longer work. That was one of the areas where we made good money, good benefits. We didn't have to rely on welfare. But yet we've had people who actually had to go into food pantries to get food. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They need that help. This governor has taken a very serious issue about poverty and turned it into a political issue. He's taken an issue that he's pitting one Mainer against another. That is wrong. If this governor was serious, if he was serious about the abuse that's in the system, he would look at his own department, the abuse that has occurred within this administration, in the Department of Health and Human Services. This is not a political issue. This is an issue that's important to Mainers here, and we have to get to talking about the facts and how we're going to solve the problem. The Inspector General's office is one way. We take the politics out of it. We take the governor's office, the department out of it. We have an independent agency that actually will look at waste, fraud, and abuse and figure out how we can solve it and give the legislature the tools that they need to actually address the issues legislatively, and it will also give the governor the opportunity to be able to actually question the commissioner if the commissioner is not doing the job he or she should be doing on these particular programs. So,
what's your reaction to the administration's data that they released in the past few months that EBT cards for Maine have been used in all 50 states? I mean, vacation, is that a valid data to put out there? What would you do to fix that?
Yeah, we're going to move forward with, once we roll out, I'll hold them up and give bits and pieces of my new poverty platform, but we'll be addressing those issues once we roll out the rest of it. This here is a separate issue on how you get at the waste, fraud, and abuse independently and stop the rhetoric that we keep seeing coming out of this governor and really address this issue. As far as the poverty, anti-poverty measures, we're going to be rolling that out later on, and we'll be addressing those issues at that point in time.